Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. And certainly one of the key elements of the commerce of tomorrow is going to be cybersecurity. And we'll be talking to Peter Kolarov today. Peter, how are you?
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Peter. Peter is the founder and CEO at Crayonic. Crayonic is an early stage cybersecurity startup. It's focused on solving problems around true identity of people and things in the digital domain. And I suppose as I know, Peter, you and I have talked about the hardware element, so bringing that digital element together with the real world as well. But before we go into Crayonic and the work that you guys are doing there, let's tell us a little bit about your background and how you got going before Crayonic.
That's a very interesting question. It wasn't as straightforward as it may have looked, but I've been always interested in kind of hacking and figuring out how things work. And one of my introduction to internet back in the 90s was actually playing with the identity itself. It was really figuring out how email works and how email can be spoofed, or how actually credentials such as username and password can be easily taken away from you or phished. Of course, back then there wasn't that terminology around, but that was always the interest. Then skip many years fast forward. I ended up working for a company integrator as an identity access manager architect. And I was basically dealing professionally with these issues and deploying, developing, and architecting identity and access management solutions, mostly in different verticals, finance, government, etc. From then, I kind of moved to e-signing, which was a little different, but it's still the identity.
It's still related. Yeah.
It still was how do you sign a document, electronic document, with a proof of your identity. Of course, in a paper-based form, you take a pen, you sign, and there is a signature. It proves your intent that you agree with the transaction. And it should also prove like really that you signed it. So somebody should be able to look at your signature and match you to some maybe previous signatures.
Right.
So back at that company, I have developed one of the first what's called a biometric handwritten signature solutions that were running on mobile devices. So it basically allowed you to open a document, show it on the screen of a mobile device, take a stylus, sign it with your handwritten signature, and send it to whoever. The idea was there to capture as much of the biometrics of the handwriting as possible. So we would capture, the X, Y, and maybe pressure, and encrypt this data, put it in a document. And then if somebody would need to prove your identity, they could go to actually forensic experts and study your signature, just like they would study the paper signatures.
Right.
And that would be a match. That would be your identity stored inside an electronic document. So at that point is actually when I founded Crayonic, and I stayed a little bit initially in the e-signing area and developed what we called Crayonic Pen. And Crayonic Paper. It was literally a hardware device. I think I have some here. If you want to see this, look kind of like this.
Cool.
And
I need one of those, I think.
Yes. It was a little fancy looking, but the idea of the Crayonic Pen was that it would actually recognize the handwriting itself. So you would basically train a signature, handwritten signature, and the pen would know if you are the correct owner. And every time you sign a document by signing again on the screen of the mobile device, the pen would either give you green light, it's you, or red light, it's not you. If it's you, then it could certify your identity. And this time it would use not just the biometrics, but actually it would use a certificate, digital certificate that somebody could issue to you as an owner of the pen. And with this certificate, then your identity could be proven by anybody in the world by just opening the document inside Adobe Reader and checking that it's really you who signed it. So this was really the initial concept and idea.
Well, I love it. You know, Peter, every day that I have to sign anything, and I have to deal with a company where I still have to print things out, sign them, scan them, post them, or send them. My head shakes because there are valuable solutions now in the market where I feel a lot of this can be done digitally, and clearly you've worked on those. So you were involved in the e-signature space, and then you started Crayonic. Tell us a little bit more about Crayonic and where you are today and the types of solutions that you guys are putting together.
So yes, Crayonic is, if I would have to now say it in very short, it's developing solution to get rid of passwords. And we got there actually.
Can we just pause for a second? Please get rid of them. It's a nightmare for all of us.
Indeed, yeah, it was a bad idea 50 years ago when they were invented. The person who invented them actually already knew at that time that it was a bad idea, but we stuck with them. You know, we somehow there was nothing, I guess, easier to do than having a password. It's basically a secret word, a shared secret between two parties. And when I say it, and I say the same word that you know, it lets me in. But obviously, the idea is already flawed from the beginning. The password cannot be really that secret, you know, because there's always the other side who knows the same word. And if somebody takes it from you, then they can pretend that it's me or you, vice versa.
Right.
So obviously, from usability point of view, people have to remember them, change them, and people are really bad at coming up with really good passwords. And even if they're really good passwords, they can still be stolen. And worst problem is that they can be phished.
Right.
So
you guys are working on the password solution. So tell me how that kind of manifests into products that individuals and customers would utilize.
So we basically utilize the standard that was invented not too long ago, and it put together big companies such as Google, Microsoft, even Apple, and they finally agreed on some standard which could replace this shared secret with a cryptographic math, effectively. Mm-hmm. It would use something called zero knowledge proof, mm-hmm. or maybe digital signature that proves that I am who I am without disclosing anything about that secret. So this is effectively this public-private key infrastructure in a very efficient manner. And here, the hard part is now, how do you deal with these cryptographic keys? If you're going to replace passwords with something much more complicated, it has to be made really simple for the end user.
Right.
Because obviously cryptographic keys, you cannot, store in your head and do the operations in your head to actually project and do the calculations, right? You need to have a device that can do this for you. Obviously, you could use your mobile phone or a PC to store these secrets on, but we've taken a different route. We actually developed a device ourselves that could store all these cryptographic keys, but only unlock them for you if the device is very sure of your identity. So you have to first prove your identity to that special device. We call it also smart authenticator, but of course it has a name in our company, and it's Crayonic Key Vault. And if you want to see, it looks something like this. I don't know if you can see this.
So that's a Crayonic Key Vault, yeah?
Yes.
Nice.
It's a size of a key, basically. That's why it's and the reason it's called Key Vault is because it can store multiple keys, not just one key. Okay. And it's not just storing those keys; it can use them in a secure manner. So the device is never online. You cannot have any malware installed, but it easily connects to your other devices. And this is also thanks to the standard I mentioned, the FIDO standard, which is already present in most of the devices that we have today. That's mobile phones, tablets, your PC, your notebook. Now even some doors have it. So you can.
So I mean, with the key vault, I mean, it reminds me of kind of some of the things that I've seen. My friends that are active in the cryptocurrency space have these kind of key vaults. Would that
Yes.
be a potential customer for you?
Yes, that's something very similar. Cryptocurrency users are the first ones who basically ditch the passwords, and they have the mantra of not your key, not your crypto. So if you lose your key or somebody steals it, then you really don't own any of that crypto that you supposedly own.
Right.
So they were the first people who accepted that, yeah, there has to be some secure device that can do these operations on your behalf, has to be offline. And the idea is now only how you prove to that device that you are who you are. Because if somebody steals that device, then they would obviously have access to the keys. So this is basically where we have focused on and try to develop different modes of accessing these cryptographic secrets. And we use mostly biometrics and also some knowledge factor. So the biometrics would be, for example, your fingerprint on the sensor on the. But for us, even more important is something we call a behavioral biometrics. So, for example, combining that little knowledge factor, just 4-digit PIN, with your behavior. For example, how you write or how you speak the PIN. This is something unique to you. And even if I would tell you that my PIN code is 1, 2, 3, 4, you still would not be able to, let's say, write it with your hand, with handwriting. This also kind of offers what we called a proof of free will. That's something very important in some high-level transactions or high-value transactions, because it doesn't just prove that I am who I am and that maybe I'm alive, but that I really want to be in that transaction, because it's really hard to actually just write a correct PIN with a correct handwriting. You really want to you have to really try to do this. And that's really a big differentiator in basically between Crayonic Key Vault and standard.
Yeah, well, I gotta tell you, the reason why the e-signature pen that you showed me before really I think is valuable is anybody who's tried to sign anything just using a mouse pad. it's an interesting process. It's an interesting process.
Yeah, that's usually that will be just a scribble on obviously that would not give you much value. Usually in electronic documents that people sign, the identity does not come from this handwritten scribbled signature. The identity usually comes from some other proofs of when you signed it, did you log into the system, etc. So it's kind of a log of events and other factors. But
yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, Peter, we find ourselves at a time where I feel like there are potentially like two competing sources or two competing powers, but at the same time they're somehow related, and they may not be competing. And one is this focus on identity and making sure that we authenticate and we verify and we know, versus this demand that we see that really took off, I would say, over the last decade, which is the push for greater privacy, customer privacy, and the personal ownership of information. And we've seen that kind of impact different industries in different ways. In the advertising and marketing world, we've seen the shift over to kind of like a cookieless world, and certainly in the cybersecurity space, we've seen the work that your team and companies like yours have been doing. But how do you see that battle being waged, and how does it come together?
This is a very good question, because you can achieve security. That's one thing. There is this, I would say, this triangle, security, usability, and security. Oh, sorry, privacy. So it's very hard to balance all three. Usually you can have solution that's not very usable, but it's very secure. It could be, I don't know, a computer turned off below your desk. Nobody ever touches it. It's offline. It's pretty secure. If you want something usable, you have to have you have to think even simpler than password. So for us, it was kind of a press of a button. If I want to unlock my PC, I can take a keyboard. I just have it. I press a button. It's almost too simple then for some people. Are like, oh, is this really secure? But yes, it's secure because there is other things that happen inside that can prove that you are who you are. There is some cryptographic maths, etc. And then there is this whole privacy side. So for example, I can log into a remote system with my face. If that face is recognized by the system on the other side, that's probably not very private because they would have to have basically my face on the other side.
Right.
This would be a biometric authentication with centralized biometrics. If an attacker gets there, obviously they can steal the biometrics and use it for other purposes. This actually happened. There's many stolen fingerprint databases this way. But we looked at it differently. We make sure that it's usable. As I mentioned, just you can use one click to get in, but it has to be very private. And we believe that the only way to do it is if all the information, all sensitive information, stays with you in your hands. It doesn't leave the device that you trust, that it's protecting your sensitive data. And some of the most sensitive data is actually biometrics. So if we evaluate a fingerprint, it's evaluated inside that secure device. It never leaves. It never goes on the outside. The other system never knows anything about the biometrics. They just know that you went through the biometric authentication and that it passed. And there is a mathematical proof of it. But there is no biometric, no sensitive information, no first name, no last name leaving the device. It all stays there. If you want it to leave, you can tell the device that, okay, I want to release, let's say, my first name or my login or whatever, but you have that under your control. And so this is the balance. This is what we call decentralized authentication or decentralized identities,
Right.
where you are under control of your identity and you only show that part that you want to show. You don't have to show the whole ID card with all your name, last name, and date of birth just to prove, let's say, that you are older than 18. Right. And the same, of course, applies to the biometrics and the templates. So this is very tricky to get. And we believe with the decentralized identity and decentralized authentication, we can achieve this,
And is this somehow applying blockchain? Is that related to the blockchain and kind of a ledger?
The technology is very similar because it's using what's called digital signatures to prove your identity or your authentication intent. Same digital signatures are used in blockchain or cryptocurrencies to sign the transactions that you want to transfer X amount of Bitcoin from this address to this address. So the math is the same, the operations are the same. But it does not require blockchain to operate. It can protect the blockchain transaction. So I can send to it a transaction to confirm and sign, but it does not need it to operate it. It can be totally happening.
Well, I imagine, Peter, that during the pandemic, maybe facial recognition has taken a step back as we all have had our masks on, but maybe it's all about the eyes. That I guess is the key. But tell me a little bit more about what the last year has been like for you and Crayonic. It's been a moment for obviously a lot of personal challenges, but also I'd be curious to hear how it's impacted the business and going forward.
It impacted us definitely in good ways and in bad ways. In bad ways, obviously, a couple of the team members who did get sick actually did survived, but was a little bit harder for them, let's say, and it slowed us down, put us back a few months. Also, if you have to do sales over Zoom, it's nice to get in contact with people. It's easy to start the lead, but it's very difficult to close any new business, as you can imagine, over Zoom. On the other hand, I think it gave us time to focus more on work without having to travel extensively and really sit down and finish the product. So I think in that term, it helped. And we also actually somehow managed to close our seed financing round. So it was pretty...
Congratulations.
Unexpected during the COVID, but yeah, we managed to do it, and we closed it in, I think last November. It was finally done. But yeah, that was kind of thanks to also that the investors realized that what we are working on is needed even more now than it was before. So it kind of gave us an extra validation, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the things that's very clear is that the pandemic operated as an accelerant in a way to us shifting over to a truly digital identity, or at least a digitally driven identity. And that is where Crayonic plays in making sure that that's validated, genuine, and protected. So tell me a little bit more about how you see the future evolving for Crayonic. It seems like there's going to be a lot more activity in this space.
Yes, that's also what we believe, that during the pandemic, the shift from just talking about cybersecurity and security on its own has shifted a little bit more towards like identity and digital identity and really what is behind it. Because really, without strong proof of digital identity, there is not much cybersecurity left. And I think that shift really allowed us to kind of position a solution a little bit better and prepare it for the upcoming years, where we believe that we'll hopefully take big.
Yeah, I have no doubt, Peter, that this is a central element. As we talked about this, the discussion around identity, I feel, is very interwoven with this sense of privacy. And the question will be whether our world and individuals will become comforted and comfortable with the protection that identity can provide, and somehow we can marry that with a level of anonymity when individuals want that. It's going to be a dance, and I don't think we're going to get it right the first try, but we need Crayonic and companies like yours coming up with solutions in this space. Peter, thank you so much for joining us on UNCAGED today. It's been great to talk to you. Peter, if people want to reach you and learn more about what Crayonic is doing, where should they go?
Yeah, I think visit our website, crayonic.com, and all the contact information is there. And,
excellent.
Yeah, that's the best place to start.
That's great. Well, I'm going to work on my digital signature, Peter. And it's been great to learn more about what Crayonic is doing in the latest in the cybersecurity space. We've been talking to Peter Kolarov. He is the founder and CEO of Crayonic. It is a cybersecurity startup which was actually launched in 2015. It focuses on solving the challenges around true identity of people and their things in the digital domain, and how those digital domain elements actually stretch into the real world as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Peter.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.